of the social, political, economic, and cultural issues in the Philippine history. Okay, now let's proceed to our topic. So what are the topics that we're going to discuss for this video? We have the Marawi City Crisis, issue on low salaries, issues on contractualization, issue on fare hike, issue on K-12 curriculum, and energy crisis in the Philippines. So we will talk about first the Marawi City Crisis. So actually, I would want you to watch a documentary. This documentary about Marawi. This is just, I think a 30-minute video. So go to YouTube and search for this documentary Marawi 153 Days of War and watch this because you'll have to answer it in the uh, one of the questions in the quiz is about the Marawi City crisis. Okay, so the next issue is the issue on low salaries, kamay og sweldo, which have been existing up to now. So what is the issue? Low salaries, lack of incentives, but rising cost of living in the Philippines. So it's not proportion. Kag magsildo pero mahal ang palaliton. Forces Filipino to gamble their fate abroad, leaving more vacancy in the Philippines because we don't have any more chance to earn high salaries or earn a living here in the Philippines. Most Filipinos would go abroad. Nurses, doctors, and kamo. They said the 10,000 monthly salary, good for a family of five, is not enough for a decent family. Maglisod kayo, dili, not even for two person. Lisod kayo on 10,000 is just very, very small. The problem here, employers of small businesses are against wage increase. Why? Because if they increase wage, they have to raise the consumer price of goods and services or reduce business costs. Also, it can lead to higher tax rate and higher payroll taxes or contributions in the SSS, Pag-ibig, PhilHealth, and other contributions of the employee. So kani siya for small businesses. But for those big businesses, I don't know, what is their reason why they cannot provide or give higher salaries? Could be because of greed of money. We don't know. But this issues on low salaries is existent all over the Philippines, especially in the rural areas or in even especially here in Negros. So government employees versus private sector employees, those employed by the government and those employed on the private sector. What's their difference? For the government employees, they enjoy excellent benefits and job security than employees in private sectors. Less ra ang benefits sa mga private employees. Job security is more stable and permanent for the government employees. For the private employees, no one is assured of a permanent position, even if one is a holder of a license from the Philippine Registered Commission or the PRC, Philippine Regulatory Commission. Next is issues on contractualization, violation of workers' basic rights. So what is in here? Organized labor groups wanted to end contractualization to force enterprises to hire workers for longer term periods. Kaning contracts, like 3-month contract or 1-year contract or 6 months contract and then wala na, dili longer or permanent hiring. So business enterprises find labor costs to be too high in relation to productivity. That's why they would not end. That's why they would just opt to have their employees on contract. Many local businesses are apprehensive that shouldering the cost of regularization of employees would result to less hiring and or retrenchments. However, today, as of 2018, not today, But as of 2018, private companies and firms are required to regularize their employees. They are required to submit the report on employees' regularization tenure. Penalty is imposed to companies or firms that do not comply with the order. So mostly the companies would have a 3 month or 6 month contract, and after which they would apply for regularization. And then the 30th issue on fare hike. So ang pamasahe. The issue of raising fares in buses, jeepneys, and taxis is a never-ending issue. Every year, na-issue aning fare, pamasahe. Karon ra mo'y nawala because of the COVID crisis. Yearly, drivers are asking for a fare hike from LTFRB. And I think you have been hearing this in the news. The drivers and operators wanted an immediate increase in fare because there is a rapid increase of vehicle parts and diesel, which require the immediate recovery of costs of operating the units. So their reasoning is that they want an increase in fare kay mahal sad, nag-increase sad ang ilahang needs and demands and need sa ilahang salakyan, the vehicle parts and diesel. So wala na sila, gamay na kayo ang ilahang kita. And then the next issue is on K to 12 curriculum. So K to 12 basic education curriculum, I think you have been part of this. So instead of the normal na up to grade 10 lang, so there is an addition of grade 11 and grade 12. So additional 2 years, and that is senior high school. So the program adds 2 years of senior high school to the country's basic education system, which allows senior high school students to specialize in one of three tracks: academic, technical vocational livelihood, and sports and arts. So last March 2017, a coalition of teachers and staff of higher educational institutions around the Philippines petitioned the Supreme Court to suspend the K to 12 law. So that's suspend K to 12 coalition last 2017 when the government issued the K to 12, they opposed it for this reason. The K to 12 program does not take into account the labor rights of teaching and non-teaching staff who will be displaced by the program. So daghang mawad-an og trabaho. About 13,000 teaching staff will lose jobs over a 5 period, including nearly 11,000 non-teaching staff. So that's their reasoning why it has to suspend. I think it was suspended, right? And but then it pushed through. And according to the coalition of teachers, unless full protection of labor is ensured and the attack on security of tenure and other rights is avoided, the K to 12 law becomes a justice and peace issue. So on the government side, they said that the government had set in place programs to accommodate displaced workers. So if the problem is daghang mawad ang trabaho, na ay programs para ana, according to the government. And the government will set aside funding over the next several years to support a transition fund and several other programs. So they've set aside 20 billion in funding has been slated for 2016 and 26.7 billion for 2017, and almost the same amount, 20 something billion every year for the K to 12 program. However, only few are benefited from this funding, such as scholarship funds. And then the last issue for today, energy crisis in the Philippines. When you say energy, we have our electricity. So brownouts is always expected. Brownouts actually is not a proper term. It's a Philippinism. Kita ray kabalo aning brownout. The proper term for this is voltage reductions or outage or blackouts. So, and this is not just the main issue here. There are a lot of areas in the Philippines na walay suga. So that's also one of the crises. That's also one of the issues. So those with long memories will remember that the Philippines has been here before in the literally dark days of the early 1990s under the administration of President Corazon Aquino. Sige, if you can remember, I don't know, but I can still remember on during my childhood na, sige rami og lampara. Magamit ng lampara because sige ga brown out. In 1986, the ouster of President Marcos, pagpapahawa ni President Marcos, led to the cancellation of controversial nuclear power plant. And so the nuclear power plant is another source of energy, supposed to be, it's a very good, it's sufficient, but sufficient supply of energy. Dili problema og energy ang Pilipinas. But it's very, very dangerous. Kaya kung mulik ang nuclear plant, wala talo. Wala. We will repeat what happened sa Chernobyl nuclear power. So, and imagine a nuclear power plant, ang usa ka leak, usa ka tulo nga leak sa nuclear power plant is equivalent to one bomb. Hindi na siya ka-explosive. But no question in terms of sufficiency sa energy. It's really very good energy supply when we'll use the nuclear power plant. But then again, it's very dangerous. And no capacity was built, leading to day-long outages that stalled the economy. And during Ramos' administration, he solved the problem through emergency powers granted by the 1991 Energy Crisis Act to conclude contracts for new power generation. So why hasn't the government's response been more proactive? One answer is red tape. The Department of Energy estimates that it takes 165 signatures in a minimum of 3 years to secure the necessary permits, which can then be challenged and delayed in court by local activists who opposed it. Another is reluctance of some investors in the face of contractual and pricing insecurity. In the last decade, the previous Arroyo administration renegotiated the contracts made during the energy crisis in 1990s to try to get more favorable terms, and the Energy Regulatory Commission has often been slow to approve cost recovery, delaying rate changes in the face of increasing generation costs. So wala. And private sector is the one handling our energy, so manang mahal pud kaayo. So energy crisis has been an issue and it's never been solved.